of the same champion pool. Things like the Ryze, the Varus, the Galio, the Kai'Sa, all these picks are really popular for both these teams. Some of the differentials come in things like the Akali. Hanabi has shown a lot of proficiency on it, whereas Naul, while trying to get his hands on it sometimes, doesn't have the same level of impact. Whereas for Zeros, the Jace is something that you really want to avoid giving to him because of how powerful it is, which is why we're seeing that ban come out from the side of the Flash Wolves.
Yeah, and Hanabi is a very interesting player for me because he's been a bit of a mixed bag internationally. When you think back to last year's MSI, he had an outstanding performance, notably his Yasuo. He was getting a lot of attention for playing carries and being so dominant. Then Worlds came around and everyone's like, all right, let's go, come on, bring on the carries. And he was playing tanks and not really having that same level of success. He certainly was underperforming both in the summer split in the LMS as well as at Worlds. And here he is once more at MSI, and we're going to get to see what kind of performance he's going to turn in.
Well, now he's picked up what we could assume would be an Akali for him, a champion he's played 7 times over the course of this split, where it's only been seen once in the hands of Rather. Now, Rather, of course, a very mechanically proficient player, but not necessarily someone we look at to be very lane dominant. So 2 flex picks now locked in. Have to see who is going to take each of these respective melee champions.
Now, I do like the fact that Phong Vũ Buffalo were able to get themselves the Rek'Sai, which is a strong early game jungler, which is where I feel Zhao performs the best. The concern is where the fact that you give away both Akali and a Sylas, both very powerful picks. You're expecting the Akali to go into the hands of Hanabi. We already talked about how this is a champion that he likes to play. It's something that he has had a lot of highlight reel plays on already. And I feel like that giving it over to him is always a risk. But fortunately for Phong Vũ Buffalo, they then left the Ryze open. The next best big flex pick that actually does very well into both these champions.
Look, everybody gets a flex pick, Vedius. Those are the rules. Now you get your priority support, you get your priority jungler, you get a Ryze, you give up 2 flex picks on the opposite side. If this costs them, we're going to have to see. But now if the Nautilus gets locked in, the mystery of the flex pick will be gone. We will know immediately where this is going to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly the case, unless there's going to be something extremely crazy. They're going to flex one of these in the jungle, but I'm not expecting that. You do have a little bit of diversity between these 2 squads, though. Obviously, they match the support picks, but there is, a jungle to be banned from the side of PVB. I'm expecting them to focus there. On the side of Flash Wolves, they can then focus on some of the solo lane picks that would perhaps be coming out for Naul, as they have already locked in both their solo laners. So that's where I think a lot of the focus will go. Neither team has actually picked up their bot laner. There haven't been too many bans down in that direction, so picks along the lines of Varus, I do think are going to be really high priority.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think Varus is one of those champions that both AD carries want to get their hands on, but as you mentioned, it seems that solo laners for the side of Flash Wolves, with the Zoe being taken off the board, wouldn't be surprised to maybe see something like a LeBlanc also taken away from the hands of Naul so that Akali can be in a slightly better position. Maybe even the Vladimir as well if they are concerned about it, but interestingly, they're actually going to pivot and take the Varus off the board themselves, even though they had the first pick.
And when it makes a lot of sense when you look at BigKoro and what he has been successful on, but I do feel like there was the option to take it away. Maybe just looking to get Vedius that comfort, or Betty that comfort pick Ezreal as we continue in the draft.
It would be interesting if they actually, ban the Varus, take the Lucian, and deny the Lucian Braum, as well as kind of one of the answers that you might want to grab that up with, which could perhaps be that Varus, but instead they're going to go to Kalista here. Very interesting.
So Kalista has actually always been banned away from the Flash Wolves because it is Betty's most successful champion. Domestically, he is undefeated on the champion. It is something that has shown so much respect towards him, and teams just refuse to let him have it. So the moment I saw the Varus ban, I was thinking, okay, he must be focusing on this direction, and when paired up with a Naulilus, you have a very potent kill lane towards the bottom half.
5 games, 100% win percentage, 11.2 KDA. This man has some insane stats. We're going to have to see if you can replicate it up against BigKoro and the lethal threat of the Braum Lucian lane. These are 2 very explosive bot lanes. The Aatrox, though, will be the final pick on the side of Phong Vũ Buffalo.
Yeah, and if you're going to go Zhao here alongside that Nautilus, those ganks are so easy to set up on that bottom side. So much crowd control, so much early aggression that is potentially coming out here from the Zhao. And this feels like this is a Flash Wolves lineup to really speed up the pace of the game. They have been receiving criticism for playing too slowly, sitting too far back, and allowing teams to kind of impress their will on them. And this is a game where you think that they are going to speed it up, they are going to get aggressive and really try to make things happen, but there is a lot of early game power on the other side as well, because it's Lucian Braum they are going up. Rek'Sai can certainly match those ganks, and that is why I think this jungle matchup is going to be so important, because whoever has that counter gank, whoever gets kind of that second engage, usually comes out on top in those sorts of fights.
So brawling is what I'm hearing a lot of, Azael.
Yeah.
I'm expecting some kind of fighting. I'm expecting a lot of blood to be shed on the Rift, and both these teams are 0 and 2. They want to be still making a run for that 4th place spot. They still want to be going to the playoffs. So finding a win here is definitely a very important.
And I love that we're seeing potentially the return for PVB to a more aggressive style and the adaptation for Flash Wolves to be willing to match fire with fire. As you said, this first win is so important, not just for the tournament, not just for trying to secure that 4th place spot or make it into the bracket stage, but also for regional pride. Once again, the VCS has been rising. The LMS has been struggling. A lot of things feel like they are on the line in terms of regional pride, regional strength. Who will remain in that 5th place spot by the end of this tournament? I think that is the question that everyone is asking between these two regions. For now, though, have to wonder where the jungler is going to go. What kind of impact will they have on this early game? And here we are, PVB on the blue side, Flash Wolves on the red. Once again, both teams 0-2 after difficult starts. Will we see more from the Flash Wolves today as an unsurprising
Too
bomb?
young to die.
1 death already in the game, brutal. Earliest first blood.
Yeah, very, very early. But, you know, one of the things that really stands out to me when I'm looking over the side of Flash Wolves is how poor their siege is, how much of a brawly comp this is. This is 4 melee champions and a very short-range marksman. This is fight it out, engage, engage, engage. And we're going to see if they're going to be able to do that, because this is the kind of lineup that looks amazing from ahead and awful if you fall behind. There's very little wave clear. There's, you know, not really a lot of separate win conditions besides just run at them and hope you win.
Yeah, I agree. Whereas for Phong Vũ Buffalo, they have a little bit more options. They can play the 1-3-1. You can send Ryze off to one side lane, the Aatrox off to the other. They both have teleport, so it's very easy for them to converge. They have a very solid mid-game spike at around 2 items, so they can look to force fights then. So I don't know if PvB need to be aggressive in the early game, but if they are going to be aggro in the early game, then I want to see plays up towards the top side of the map. Try and put the Akali behind, play around the Aatrox, who is a strong laner, and utilize some of the mobility that Rek'Sai has to get Zeros ahead up towards the top side of the map.
Yeah, it'll be so interesting to see if they're able to do that, because, you know, certainly you can see the 1-3-1 on the side of PvP. Flash Wolves do have double TP on their solo, so they can look to match that. But, you know, the wave clear, certainly a really big thing. Yes, Sylas can Q-max, but this is not the kind of wave clear that you're wanting to depend on if you fall behind. And I do think solo lane advantages are going to become a really big deal, giving you access to those neutral objectives, where I think both these teams are going to be wanting to fight it out.
And already a small duo lane advantage for the side of Flash Wolves. They got to go to lane first, did not leash for their jungler, so we'll get priority over this wave. Pal and BigKoro, though, still not afraid to trade, still happy to use the concussive blows from Braum to try to fire back, but Halo Blade's Kalista can be so oppressive.
Yeah, I really like Halo Blade's Kalista for the laning phase, largely because it allows you to get a lot of Ren stacks out very, very quickly, which means that you can go for those very short, very punchy kind of trades because of the amount of extra burst that you can get. So the Lucian Braum have to be careful of these early exchanges, but note the exhaust being run by Pallet. Very aware of the amount of kill threat on the side of Flash Wolves will mitigate a lot of early potential plays.
Yeah, and I mean, if you overextend on that Nautilus, if you do dive too far forward, there is certainly the potential for the Lucian Braum to turn those fights around on you. Nautilus is really not that tanky once the Aftershock does expire. The exhaust can help you to buy some time. Very effective against Kalista, so it will be interesting to see how that lane is playing out.
For now, we keep our eyes on Bugi as he moves down to the blue buff. We'll get level 3 soon. Can look to pressure it out on the bottom side of the map. Rek'Sai already taking that bot side. Scuttlecrab, though, puts him in a comfortable position in terms of vision control. May make it a bit more difficult to find a solid gank path. But that Xin, you talked about it. If he finds those early ganks, this champion very quickly can take over a game.
Now, I will say, we expected brawling. With 3 minutes in, no one has died yet. So we're just a little disappointed. But of course, junglers already making their move. You can see Bugi making his way towards the bot side as we expected. They want to try and get this duo ahead. But PvP, very aware that a gank could be coming through, trying to play towards the back end of the wave. But this wave is actually slowly pushing towards the bot lane of Flash Wolves.
Yeah, it's a very risky spot, honestly, you know, for PvP when the lane is pushing away. But here comes Bugi.
ShiauC stepping forward. The dash up from Pallet is there. Unbreakable to block it. Pallet even willing to step forward in the exchange. Well played by PvP. They knew the gank was coming and played around it perfectly.
Pallet holding on to his W, waiting for the hook to come out from ShiauC, then uses it to dodge out from the crowd control, and they're able to get out of what could have been a very sticky situation. So now Zhao makes his way towards the bot side of the map.
And all this time that is being invested, you know, by the Zhao, by Bugi, you've already seen Zhao is up a couple camps. He had already gone back to base, picked up the Chilling Smite. So, you know, he is kind of going to be outpacing that that pace that is being set here by the Zhao, and he's going to have his own opportunities to look for those ganks on the bottom side of the map, or try to pressure mid perhaps as well, where there is really solid gank setup here from the Ryze with that Rune Prison.
Have to see, though, what else can he get done? I think that the scary thing about me for Bugi and this Zhao is that we've seen PVB run the Xin before themselves. Meliodas has tried it, and when it doesn't go well in the early game, things tend to fall apart very quickly, and you can see Pout and BigKoro already willing to step into that jungle, already willing to do what they have to limit the impact here. And normally a very terrifying early game champion outside of Bugi can't really threaten this bottom side.
PVB, though, utilizing the bot lane pressure that they have extremely well. They moved up to try and set some vision, but now BigKoro could be in some danger as Pallet soaks up the damage.
Aftershock has been used, though. Have to be careful, as you mentioned, once the tankiness falls off. BigKoro and Pallet just making great use of the concussive blows there to disengage.
Yeah, exactly. You throw up the door on the side of the Braum, that slows it down. You have Guardian, you have all of that kind of damage absorption, and as long as BigKoro is behind the Braum and being able to proc the concussive blows, that plus press the attack is making those kind of trades back very, very effective. But Flash Wolves did get a base off already. It's the early tier 2 boots upgrade here for Betty, which is pretty standard on the Kalista. It does increase the amount of distance you can actually hop with those auto attacks, and is going to be pretty effective, especially if you are going aggressive and chasing down your opponents.
But already you're seeing a bit of a CS discrepancy here. Will balance out a bit as Kalista catches the wave, but you can see that BigKoro has been completely comfortable on the bottom side of the map despite initial expectations for a lot of early ganks. Just getting that one fumble does put him in a comfortable position to get a bit of lifesteal, stay safe in this lane, and just wait out the Kalista.
So I will say that looking and thinking a little more about Flash Wolves' composition, I do think they have, with the Sylas and Akali, they do kind of have some scaling options. We talked a bit about how PVB have this 1-3-1, but when I think about it, like Akali actually very strong in a side lane, especially at 3 items. Some pro players consider her one of, if not the strongest side lane duelist because of the amount of mobility and burst that she has, and you can never trade back against her, right, as long as her Shroud is up. And on top of that, Sylas, once he hits that level 16 mark, he scales very well with cooldowns. Once he's sitting at 40-45% CDR, he can just keep those rotations going. He has a lot of sustain. The shields make it extremely difficult to out-trade him as well. So if this game goes on long from the side of Flash Wolves, why it is not ideal, because obviously you're running things like the Kalista that becomes harder to execute the longer the game goes on, they still kind of have some fallback options.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, both sides are going to have their options in the later stages of the game. Certainly PVB will be looking to match that side lane pressure with that of their Ryze,
sure,
who scales incredibly well. But, it's a good kind of mix of strength. Both Rek'Sai and the Zhao do certainly fall off towards later stages. Lucian and Kalista also often struggle, especially against all these kind of bruisers and melee champions. You're relatively short range, so it's pretty easy for them to get up on top of you. And then it does become, somewhat about how the supports are going to be able to peel for and protect those AD carries, to be able to be that front line and create space for them to get damage.
Small engage in the mid lane. Naul gonna throw a few skill shots down and try to trade back. If he steps forward, Bugi will most likely just try to come in on this gank, but people if they're gonna stop rather from getting any closer, and both junglers waiting, ready to go in for the 2v2, but neither one gonna pull the trigger and force.
So just a lot of patience coming out from both junglers right now. Not quite the early game that we were expecting. We were expecting a couple more ganks. While a couple of attempts have been made, nothing has already translated so far. As we see a couple more trades happen up towards the top side of the map. Hanabi does have the ultimate, but so does Zhao. So nothing going to come off the back of that.
And for PVB, we've been concerned. When the game starts to slow down, they don't look quite as explosive, they don't look quite as confident. We saw it yesterday in their game versus Team Liquid. When they played slow, they got outclassed. When they played fast versus IG, they were going toe-to-toe in so many of those exchanges.
Yeah, it's definitely the case, and I think as a result, a lot of people are hoping that PVB does pick up the pace and try to play it a little bit faster. It did feel like that's more their wheelhouse. When you look at VCS as a region as well, it is one of the bloodiest, if not the bloodiest regions in the world too. They played extremely fast throughout play-ins as far as being willing to take fights and trade kills, and it feels like that is where they excel. So you kind of want to see them play that style, because Flash Wolves is this team that likes to sit back, that likes to get Betty to those team fights where he's going to be so good.
And now the level 6s are coming through for PVB. We could just see that happen. Do they want to try and force the fight? No, they don't. They're going to take an objective, and they're going to walk away, Jen.
Who wants objectives?
Who wants those objectives, really? There's even a Cloud Drake on the board right now, so you don't expect a lot of priority to be going on between these two teams. But this is kind of where the concerns come from, right? They're slowing down the game. Many analysts perceive that this team doesn't know how to play the slow macro game. They're much more about the, let's get a lot of kills, let's go for a lot of fights. But so far, they're trying to use their pressure to gain advantages, get deep vision, and they're taking their time.
And they're doing well. You know, they are, you know, even a little bit ahead on gold over Flash Wolves. So certainly I don't think there's a tremendous amount of pressure on them to get something done, and they may be able to prove a lot of people wrong by winning this style of game. If you can beat Flash Wolves at kind of what is their own style, I think that is certainly a nice statement to make.
Rather though, caught between two members. He's gonna have to back off Bugi here as well, but 400 gold difference already between the junglers. Bugi trying to force a lot of those early ganks has cost him dearly in early CS, so the Rek'Sai sitting quite comfortably at this stage. And no really explosive plays yet. It feels like we've been so close. So many people have stared each other in the face, and both sides have just kind of decided to back off.
Yeah, and it does feel like sometimes when you get in these situations where both these teams are sitting at the bottom of the standings, no one wants to make that mistake that is really going to cost them another loss. They know they need to start picking up wins here, and perhaps as a result, they are going to play a little bit more risk-averse and trying to kind of depend on getting those more guaranteed plays.
Yeah, and as Flash Wolves as a team, that very much fits into their wheelhouse for now. They're quite content with how things are going. Even the Kalista, even though she's a very early game focused champion, I feel like at 2 items, she's very, very strong. So I don't think that they need to be concerned as of yet, as we see Hanabi going for an all-in top side.
Uses both stacks of the ultimate, traded though for the Aatrox ultimate. You see the Zhao backing off. ShiauC is in the top side of the map, so have to be careful on the side of Hanabi, but at the end of the day, just an ult for ult trade.
Yeah, and Hanabi's going to be really hard to take down here. Akali is so evasive, and both the Rek'Sai as well as this Aatrox deal physical damage, rush the early Seekers to give you a lot of safety there.
But surprise, the bottom lane is on the top side of the map. Pallet is able to land the concussive blows. The knockout comes out. Pallet not able to connect, but it does force Hanabi to backstep. Now visible on the map. The exhaust coming out. One stack going to be there. BigKoro going to use the heal to get closer. 2 taps. Piercingly lit there on the top side. The TP coming in, but it might be too little too late. Rather, has the Rek'Sai ultimate. Could look to extend the play, but don't think it's the right choice. Zhao on the top side as well.
And a quick rotation from the Phong Vũ Buffalo allow them to find first blood onto Hanabi, who used all of his skills to try and get that shutdown onto Zeros. Because of the trade of ultimates, neither of them was available, which then enabled Pallet to go for the all-in. Now, admittedly, 3 summoner spells were used in getting that kill, so hopefully Phong Vũ Buffalo can convert it into a lot of plates so that that wasn't...
Pallet.
4 summoner spells were used to try and get that kill up towards the top side of the map.
In that play, nobody saw it, but now the speed of the game is starting to ramp up as the Riptail has been used on the top side. A few plays picked up by PVB. Of course, the more members here, the stronger the tower will be, but still going to try to cut through it. Those first 3 plays quite easy, and rather just forced to back away in this trade. Yeah,
in the meantime, ShiauC and Betty are working away at that turret. They will be the first ones to knock down a turret, grabbing that first brick for themselves, but despite the fact that Hanabi went down, this was not the most clean play here from Flash Wolves. You had to feel like running back into the Shroud with the calling active. He maybe could have just immediately flashed away, had enough health to survive any potential dive. Rather uses the teleport after Hanabi has already gone down instead of early to actually protect him. So there were certainly mistakes to criticize there from Flash Wolves. But either way, it is PVB getting first blood onto Lucian, which is going to be really, really nice for them, and trading a tower back on the top side of the map.
And Flash Wolves actually secured the first tower blood down towards the bot side of the map. But let's have a look back at how this replay played out. So, Azael, something you were talking about was Hanabi probably could have just flashed out of the situation. Perhaps he was a little bit afraid of the Braum ult, because notice how it went in the trajectory of his flash positioning. So perhaps he was sitting there anticipating the flash to come out, and then he was afraid of that Braum ult.
Yeah, it's hard to know if he would have been able to get out or not with the Braum ult and the culling still available. Either way, certainly had rather TP'd in a little bit early. You might be able to actually dissuade that dive or punish it. But it is a nice rotation there from BigKoro and Pallet. They have, to me, been the standout players for this PVB squad, and getting that early Blade of the Rune King for BigKoro is going to feel great.
And while Pallet and BigKoro did get that first blood towards the top side, Betty and ShiauC secured the first tower blood towards the bot side and got all those plates only shared between 2 people. So a lot of gold is sitting on right now the bot lane of the Flash Wolves, so they're feeling pretty comfortable and pretty happy.
But while the bot lane's doing well, the top lane is in a difficult spot. Bilgewater, Cutlass, and the Seeker's Arm Guard, not where you want to see your Akali in the early game. Yes, the Seekers make sense, but usually you want that Gutblade, you want that healing so you can be a consistent threat. Now Hanabi forced into defensive itemization very early on, but the good news is his team is starting to put a lot more pressure on the top side.
Yeah, and the Gunblade certainly is a little bit delayed, but should be okay.
Huge chunk of damage there. Zhao definitely going to try to find the kill here, but the body block on the Prey Seeker will stop anything from going down. ShiauC now Zero stepping forward. That's going to be Betty taken out. Huge damage coming in from the Aatrox. The Zhao just deleted. Now going to walk forward. The point and click. The double kill coming through, though. In the meantime, on the bottom side, we have to get the replay on that one, but it's kills across the map.
And this is what we were waiting for. Blood finally spills between the two teams as kills drop top and kills drop bot. Somehow, BigKoro was able to find a kill onto Hanabi, which had to be picked back up by Rather. While all that was going on, Zeros was committed to defending that top tower. He burnt the ultimate, he burnt the flash, he finds the execution onto Betty, and then it's just a matter of cleanup for the duo of Zhao and Zeros.
Rather now running to the mid lane, looking for the 1v1 exchange with Naul, but a lot of sustained damage coming in from Naul already, looking quite terrifying with just the Archangel staff.
Yeah, certainly sitting in a good position already. I think you are starting to see some of this additional farm, this additional power on the Rek'Sai really paying dividends. Zero starting this off very, very well, landing the Infernal Chains on Betty. He is not able to flash out before getting pulled back in, and then Zero simply flashes in on top of Betty, finishing him off, and Bugi just getting crushed through there by Zhao. ShiauC, a nice flash over the wall to escape, but 2 quick kills there, and then down on the bottom side, Pallet and BigKoro look for a dive.
Yeah, so it wasn't actually the 1v1. I definitely misread the situation. It was a 2 versus 1. Hanabi with the level 10 using the Shroud, but it then just about runs out, and that's when PVB used this opportunity to set up the play. They have the Braum ultimate available. They chain CC the Akali. Easily done. But what they don't realize is that Rather is making his way down, and he has more than enough damage to get the cleanup kills.
Proto Belt in the passive, just instantly deleted. Of course, not what you want to see. We know what it looks like when a Sylas takes over the game. The good news is there's not quite as many terrifying ults on the side of PvP for him to take away, but still a difficult position to be sure.
Yeah, it definitely is. Rather going to be the nice beneficiary of those 2 kills, and is at a pretty strong point in the game. Certainly, though, I think PVB pretty happy with their position. They're up 1.5K. They have been the ones feeling like they are now kind of speeding up the pace of the game a little bit, making some of these more proactive plays, trying to start to attack Flash Wolves here, who feel like they want to split the map, who don't really want to fight until that Gunblade is complete, I think, on the Akali. Because, as you said, you are kind of put a little bit behind the curve when you are going for that early defensive itemization.
And like you were mentioning just before, PvP playing much more aggressive. What we saw them be very successful with against IG on day 1, returning to a bit of that. Not quite as explosive. Doesn't look like Flash Wolves are quite as willing to match pace for pace here in the way that IG was. But PvP taking control, using that lane pressure, setting up for this Infernal on the bottom side that is just now spawning. The question is, will Flash Wolves try and take the fight?
Well, we can see that PvP do have priority bot, and they just cleared out the wave mid, so they have all 5 members here and in full control. A fight here could be risky.
TP coming in, Betty immediately going to get targeted out. They know how good his Kalista is. It's not going to get the chance to push a single button. The fight quickly going into Flash Wolves with Hanabi, trying to find the execution on the backside. Rather, in the midst of everybody, a lot of AoE damage in the Sylas because he heal up not enough to survive there in the midst of 5 on the side of PvB. All 5 members left standing as 3 go down on the side of Flash Wolves.
We talked about how this could have been risky for Flash Wolves. It was Phong Vũ Buffalo that had the positional advantage, and all they had to do was choke Flash Wolves out as they force themselves into that narrow corridor. Beautifully done by Phong Vũ to identify the mistake, punish it, and find themselves 3 quick kills and an Infernal.
Yeah, that was just huge for Phong Vũ Buffalo. They're now so far ahead off of that, trying to attack into this corridor, as you called out. This is warded up by PvP. They're trying to walk through this into the Braum. They're going to get CC'd up, AoE'd out by both Zeros and Pallet. So much damage coming through here. Even Naul able to start kind of cleaving through this team. Rather with a pretty nice flank, and the stolen Lucian ultimate does get a good amount of damage out. He's able to get a lot of AoE out in the middle of the team, but they've already lost the fight.
And the thing you got to remember is that neither team has a true front line, which means that outside of the supports, it's surprisingly easy to dive onto the back line, which means a lot of responsibility goes onto like the Braum and the nautlius to actually keep the AD carry alive. But unfortunately, when you do that and you just walk into that funnel point, it's very easy for Zeros to just say, well, okay, I'll just dive onto your back line, and what do I have to be afraid of? And the moment he's on there, the rest of the team is very quick to follow.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It just felt like a little bit of an over kind of exertion there from Flash Wolves. It felt like they were a little bit desperate on the play. You know, you don't need to kind of really force for that. And if you are going to, you want to be a little bit better set up, because yes, the Infernal is important, but you know, Rather was not really in at the same time as the team. Yep. Everyone needs to be making that collapse at the same time, especially with this sort of composition where it is really kind of about that initial punch where you're diving in and you're overwhelming your opponents.
And now we can see that PVB are very comfortably in the lead. So Flash Wolves want to find an opportunity. They're going to have to play on the back foot for at least the next few minutes here. PVB leads across the board. The Lucian now ahead of the Kalista, something we did not expect to be saying when you saw Betty's Kalista locked in, but it has been a difficult game. While he may be able to fight the Lucian toe-to-toe, the Aatrox has had his number across all these fights.
I remember how we talked a lot about these compositions where they're actually very similar, two very strong side lanes, both scale pretty well. So a team that has the early advantage can then snowball very quickly because the enemy solo laners cannot match the power that your solo laners have been able to build up.
Yeah, and you kind of just get stuck under your turret. There's not a lot of really good safe wave clear. Yes, Silas and Akali can wave clear, but you're putting yourself in a very dangerous position to actually move forward and do so, especially when there's a tremendous amount of CC on the other side. So it is for Flash Wolves kind of this difficult situation now where they are up against it.
Immediately going to force the stolen Aatrox ultimate out of Rather. He will back off, but this does mean that the bot lane tower can be taken out. ShiauC will grab the solo gold there, it looks like. We'll retreat there, rather half of it going over to Ryze, and things just looking very good, very comfortable for PVB now that they have this 4K lead.
Yeah, it certainly is, and this is a really big deal for PVB and the VCS region as well. Let's not forget Worlds last year, it was PVB that took down Flash Wolves that then forced them into the tiebreaker against G2 that ultimately cost them a spot moving on to the quarterfinals at Worlds. And for a long time, the VCS have wanted to establish themselves as one of the major regions, and while they are quite confidently in that 6th place spot, consistently beating out many of the other emerging regions, they really wanted to break into that top 5 position, and a big win against Flash Wolves today could begin that discussion.
And a kill on Hanabi potentially to kick it off. Hanabi needs to find a way out of this fight, but he runs face first into Naul. Just barely going to miss on the ultimate there. Call using the second dash to escape. Feels like Naul was caught a bit off guard that's the route Hanabi chose to escape.
Yeah, Pallet not quite able to connect, but still, it is PVB making these collapses on the side lanes. They're trying to extend their vision forward a little bit, trying to start getting control on their opponent's side of the jungle, and kind of using this to try to collapse to a side lane, push that solo laner back, assault the turret, and that's what they did a couple times on the bottom side to knock down one. Now looking like they are trying to head over towards this blue buff, but Flash Wolves are lying in wait.
Bugi has to be careful, rather just going to have to back off. We'll be able to steal away the Rek'Sai ultimate, but we'll have to give up the blue buff. Another one donated over to Naul. And check in on the advantages between lanes. You can see, bit of a catch-up here coming from Zhao. Has been able to grab over some of that jungle XP, but the Lucian's just getting further and further ahead. In top lane, the Aatrox still quite comfortable in the 1v1 matchup.
I mean, my biggest concern now for Flash Wolves is that their comp is very squishy. So while a lot of core itemization has come out with things like the Gunblade, the 2 items for Kalista, yes, this is very good. The fact is they have to work through 2 health bars on Aatrox, and they have to get through a Braum, which provides a lot of defensive utility. So I think they need to look for picks like this before they can really start trying for any fights later on.
And not quite enough burst damage to threaten Rather there, but BigKoro may be able to change that as he steps forward. And just the defensive utility you mentioned from Braum. Concussive blows onto assassins just cuts them down across team fights. Yeah,
that chunk at least will send Zero's back, but this is another Infernal spawning, and it does feel like PVB are the ones establishing control over this Dragon area. We saw what happened last time when Flash Wolves tried to kind of push forward through the Braum and through a lot of these PV members to take the fight. And they're looking like they want to have it one more time, but Lucian and Aatrox are not actually with the team right now to punish as they walk in.
Yeah, and props to Phong Vũ Buffalo. Notice how on the minimap they're keeping pushed up both the mid lane and the bot lane, which makes it very difficult for the Flash Wolves to actually get into a position to contest. Now Naul gonna face check Rather.
Walking to the 1v1, have to respect the Rek'Sai ultimate, but so much shielding already coming in from the Ryze. Not afraid whatsoever. Zero's now gonna be on the hunt here. Hanabi waiting around. The Ryze is gonna come in as well. Darkened Blade, where's he going to go? Bugi now running, trying to make his way out of the team by Hanabi on the retreat as well. The Rek'Sai ultimate comes out. Naul very much in danger here. Rather trying to find the kill, but he can't. Naul outmaneuvering so far, forced to use the stopwatch. Betty now chasing down the fight. He's still alive. Betty untouched on the backside. Have to respect the Aatrox, but Flash Wolves are taking over the fight. That's 2 shutdowns coming in.
Yeah, PVB just really over chasing there. They get punished as they are just walking into the meat grinder, the full Flash Wolves squad waiting outside of that tri-brush, punishing them so heavily. BigKoro just wandered into the middle of the team, gets hit by the Nautilus ult, and that's your strongest member pretty much. The Lucian was not able to contribute whatsoever. They're actually looking to try to take the Baron potentially here.
They do have the Kalista. This is going to go down very quickly. The Nautilus can just tank this one up for the time being.
King's going down. Aatrox just going to back off. Lucian potentially going to look to contest, but for now, Flash Wolves completely uncontested. The Kalista going to make this so incredibly easy, but the TP is coming in. Flash Wolves maybe looking to pick off members, maybe willing to commit to the full fight, but I don't know if they have enough time to make it into this pit. 3K and dropping the Baron should go to Flash Wolves. Can he find the Miracle Stealer? No, Zhao is going to take it down. The fight breaks out, but PvB are on the back foot, rather in trouble, but has the Aatrox ultimate available. The Resurrection coming out. ShiauC trying to make his way out to safety, but Betty now in trouble. Rek'Sai goes under, comes out, Betty goes down. Bugi next on the menu. Flash Wolves are falling apart in the fight. The contest from PvP may just save the day. 2 members walking away with the Baron.
2 back-to-back fights where Flash Wolves take the first one, and while PvP take the second, they end up losing the Baron. So, Azael, let's just focus in on what you were talking about, how Phong Vu just over-chased. They just kind of ran through this choke point, over-committing onto Radha, and just keep your eyes on the positioning of Betty. He's going to come in through the top side of the lane, completely unthreatened, and freely building up stack after stack after stack. And he's just going to melt through this Phong Vu lineup.
And look at BigKoro here. He's just kind of wandering through the team, almost trying to retreat down through the lane. He wanders out of the Tri-Brush into the lane, immediately gets ulted, has to stopwatch, then just flash back to where he came from. Certainly misplaying the fight, and while the Baron does get secured, PvP have respawned and do rejoin the fight.
And here we can see again, Betty continues to be untouched. Zhao finally dives onto the backline and does shut him down, but the damage has already been done. The Baron has been secured, and they walk away with 2 members. And now, when it was a game that was so heavily favored for Phong Vũ Buffalo, a game where they were in vast control for the majority of it, they've now just thrown it away off of a very simple mistake.
Yeah, I mean, still though, getting the 4 kills, the Dragon, the double Infernal advantage, they are still, 3-4K ahead in this game. So I do still think they are in a good position, but definitely, the Baron is one of the win conditions that PvP would have wanted to try to help close this one out, because likewise, they also don't have incredible sieging, and you are more reliant on things like the Baron buff to be able to really crack the base.
I think for Phong Vu fans, the concerns start to come in the same way that they did in the Team Liquid series, where they built up these leads, and then they would make these foolish mistakes that just gave away their advantages. And against a team like the Flash Wolves, you can't make those mistakes. So hopefully moving forward, you're right, that mistake will not cost them the game. They're still in a great position and they can still win, but they can't afford to keep doing this, otherwise the Flash Wolves will come back.
And so much comes down to execution, because we saw in the Baron fight damage graphic how much Zhao was able to do when the members are grouped up like that. The meat grinder of the Aatrox alone is such a huge threat to the squishier members of this team, so execution feels like it gets more and more crucial as we get later. And yes, Akali has the damage threat, but if she gets caught out very quickly, can just get eliminated in the fight.
We've also seen what a Sylas can do when his items start to come through. Caps had a pop-off performance last game, and now he's sitting at 3-1-3 on Radha's Sylas, with the Zhonya's about to be completed, that level 16 mark about to come through, where you can start stealing multiple ultimates. Imagine the Braum ultimate into the Lucian ultimate, then ending the fight with the Zhao ultimate. Like, there's so much utility in this ultimate from Sylas that these fights become a lot harder to play out.
A reminder that both these teams are 0-2 right now. That yes, they're fighting each other, that yes, it is the LMS versus the BCS, but it is also MSI, and rising up in these standings is crucial. An 0-3 start is an absolutely brutal way to start the group stage.
Yeah, you really do want to start picking up these wins, try to claw your way back up those standings if you want to kind of be able to challenge for that top 4 and make it to Taipei for that knockout stage.
And the importance as well, PvB playing on their home soil, and Flash Wolves, if they are able to make it to Taipei, would get the chance to play in front of their home crowd. So massive, massive for both of these guys.
Now, we can see the Dragon being set up for once again. A lot of action has been happening around these objectives, but before it, PvB are looking for a pick.
Gonna be a lot of tools to make it out to safety. Zhao chasing forward, but just a bit of damage laid down. Only gets the one sweet spot.
Again, though, it is PvB, kind of first ones to the scene, and they are going to look to turn.
Looking for the engage. Massive Braum ultimate. Lucian locked up in the backside, but immediately the coin's going to come out. Not going to connect on the Bugi, though. Able to block a little bit of the damage, but Pal and Koro in the midst of the team. Betty, no chance left to survive. Desperate to make it out of this one. Koro going to take him down. Double kill for the Lucian, but he's caught in the meat grinder here. Zhao though going to look to fire back. The stolen Sylas ultimate may not be enough to keep Rather alive. Zhao though desperate on the chase. The Akali invisible for now. ShiauC going to be the sacrificial Nautilus here in the exchange. Zhao chasing forward, but at the end of the day, just going to be a 2-for-3 exchange.
Yeah, well, it is the 2 PvB solo laners standing strong. They actually can't finish off a lot of these kills. They will now start up the Dragon, though, and should be able to grab it. So pretty even trade across the board. +1 kill for Flash Wolves, but it will be the Dragon going the way of PVB.
And it's such a crazy fight as well, because at the beginning of the game, something we talked a lot about was both teams have strong solo laners that are going to scale up to be strong split pushers, but neither of these teams want to do that. They just want to 5v5. And so you end up in this choke point where it's all about who can deal the most damage. And the thing is, Radha's in the thick of things, but he's just sustaining so much damage. Remember, he's picking up all these ultimates. He has the Aatrox to get the revive, but Naul is left untouched. So it's just a matter of the damage dealers diving onto the AD carries, trying to shut them down. These solo laners coming up big, and Hanabi buying time. Zeros buying time. Naul buying time, and then ultimately they bought too much time, and no one ends up killing anyone.
You see across the fight, the Ryze only continues to get more and more terrifying. Naul's had some monster performances across the play-in stage. This might be his first in the group stage where he really does get to pop off. The Ryze, I think if you don't get the perfect setup, this champion is just horrifying to play against. It's not even an ult that Sylas can steal to really match him.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're looking over at a squad that is 4 melee champions, they are going to be stacked up, and what he just did to that wave, he can look to do to a team fight. You want to be AoEing through that. Lucian, who has been the big target now for Flash Wolves, has a GA. That is going to make him much more difficult to take down. Zhao has just finished his GA as well, so now you have to deal with triple revive when you're counting the Aatrox ultimate in as well. You're looking at this extremely strong Ryze here too, and it does become very difficult, but critically Rather has hit level 16 and can start to get multiple ults out.
Bugi trying to fish for the fight. The TP has been forced out. If Flash will back away here, it will just be a good advantage to pick that one up uncontested. TP being used, a solid start, but Flash Wolves may continue to fish for the fight. ShiauC throws out the hook, will not connect.
Yeah, I mean, a neutral objective is up. It's time to group and fight. We've seen so far this game. Baron's on the map. Let's go, boys.
Why are we even running teleports? We don't need them. Oh, right, it's just to get back to the Baron faster. Yeah, of course.
When they die and respawn, they want to TP in. ShiauC, though, has to be careful. Arrow's throwing down a bit of damage over the wall, trying to hook out to safety. Will get pulled out by Betty there. Naul now stepping forward, Rather going to try to disengage with the stolen Braum ult. Buys a bit of time, and both sides are going to back off, but a lot of cooldowns burned on the side of Flash Wolves.
Yeah, Bugi was a bit out of position there, so Flash Wolves weren't confident committing to the fight, but now the re-engage coming out from...
Flash forward. Buys tries to buy a bit of time as the Shroud off cooldown. Hanabi not going to use it quite yet. Immediately the re-engage. Bugi stepping in forward onto the front line, but he's just hitting the Braum. Not at all what you want. BigKoro backing off. Naul backing up. They're not able to hit anything. They have to be careful. They're respecting the front line of Flash Wolves. They're respecting the dive potential. And it just means that they're absolutely getting destroyed. BigKoro and Naul do not have the freedom to do any damage, and that means they're going to give up 2 for nothing.
Yeah, and Flash Wolves come out so heavily on top. Zeros was pushed out of the back of that fight. Pallet and Zhao go down almost for free, and it's Flash Wolves now starting up the Baron with the Kalista here, looking to take control of this game.
And we've seen this one before. Zeros tries to step forward. BigKoro, though, now the one in trouble. Flash Wolves immediately turn. A beautiful play. The Rek'Sai coming through. BigKoro, the GA being burned. Naul now running for his life. They're going to focus on the AD carry. They're going to take him down, and this time around, they're not looking to sacrifice anything for that Baron.
Beautiful stuff from the Flash Wolves, taking their time, not overcommitting to the objective, and running the risk of this Ryze, demolishing this team in the Baron pit. The rest of Phong Vũ have backed away. They realize they cannot secure this objective, and this will be the second Baron of the game going over to Flash Wolves.
A back and forth game. The gold graph tells a story. The Baron was contested at first, but a beautiful turnoff from Flash Wolves. They will secure it. They will start to match up the gold and look to go toe-to-toe with PvP in this late game.
Yeah, PvP certainly starting to slip in this game. You can see that gold draft was all PvP the whole time. But again, they're committing to these fights, flashing forward. They do not have everyone with them. Zhao was not with the squad. You know, Braum is getting focused down really before they're getting any damage out whatsoever. BigKoro playing it so far back, and then Zeros is looking for this flank up on the top side of your screen, but he gets pushed out, and the fight is over before he's really even able to join. So certainly something left to be desired in these team fights. The coordination has not really been on point in some of these fights where they're not all entering at the same time.
Yeah, and it's a situation that we've seen Phong Vũ Buffalo in before, where they had this advantage. We saw it from the gold graph. They've maintained a big lead over Flash Wolves for the vast majority of this game, but unfortunately, they don't know how to convert that lead into a win, and they end up in this breakpoint with a lot of dancing, a lot of fighting, and Flash Wolves, they've just been steadily scaling up. They've been relying on the advantage that a Sylas and an Akali can build once those items start to come through, and now, level 18 on Hanabi, level 17 on Rather, 3 items finished for both of them, 4 items done for the Kalista. Flash Wolves have just gotten stronger and stronger, and they're consistently outplaying PVB in the fights.
And with the power of this Baron, they have been able to match the gold lead. They will extend it. They will be able to find a gold advantage here in this game. Yes, the double in the Infernals Double Mountain and the Infernal, Double Infernals and the Mountain for PVB are good for them overall, but you have to feel one more fight gets fumbled, then immediately Flash Wolves can just close the game.
Yeah, definitely the case, and it's been both teams opting into those fights. No one seems to want to play side lane. No one seems to want to try to split the map or look for any sort of other plays. It's all about the 5v5, and if PVB is mis-executing in those 5v5s with the Baron buff on the side of Flash Wolves, one more bad team fight can mean the end of the game potentially.
Now they're going to grab the Mountain Drake, and it feels like Flash Wolves know better than to take this fight. Of course, if they want to push for a man advantage, they could try here. Hanabi, though, with the TP up and available, would be there for the contest. And at this stage, the game just goes down far too quickly. Of course, Elder will be an objective to join the map quite shortly. 6 minutes away before the teams can contest it, but you have to feel like it's something that PVB need if they want to close out here.
So now the game slows down just a little bit. 12 to 12 in kills. The gold has finally equalized, but it really doesn't tell the story of this game where Phong Vu has such firm control over like the first 20 minutes. They overcommit onto a single fight, and then this game ends up just being multiple fight after fight after fight. And now Flash Wolves with the Baron, they're the ones that look to set up to try and siege onto the enemy base, but they're not actually pressuring right now. The Baron is going to be running out in less than a minute, and we're kind of looking at the situation where we're probably going to be seeing another fight come up soon.
Yeah, we definitely could be. Around that Elder, around the next Baron, I think those certainly are going to be the critical objectives. Flash Wolves not trying to push too heavily with this Baron buff. We're happy to just back off with a minute and a half left and take that Mountain Dragon, reset on the map. They seem to be pretty content to play this game a little bit more slowly, and things have been going in their favor, to their credit, so we'll see if they are able to be matched in these later stages.
And impressive that their team fighting prowess has allowed them to claw back in so many of these exchanges, because when we saw Betty put so far down on what we thought was a comfort pick in the Kalista and has looked like one of these late game team fights, it's a really good sign for this Flash Wolves lineup overall moving forward as they face some of the perceived stronger regions. That said, however, rather taking away the ultimate and setting up for a fight, you can see PVB having a lot more hesitation as we move later into the game. Not a ton of vision control on their side of the map.
Yeah, they are kind of getting corralled back into their base, and with Zerros up on the top side of the map, they wanted to play it a little bit more defensively. They do have those waves pushing for them now, and it looks like Zerros is going to continue to head back up to that top side of the map and will perhaps shove it in, but there is some kind of hesitation in what exactly he does want to do. So we'll see if they will just wait for the next objective and commit to another 5v5.
I feel like every fight that has happened, Azael has been around an objective. So it'd be weird if one happened without one. And with the Baron spawning in about 1:45, Elder spawning in roughly 3 minutes, we're likely going to see those being the next priority. And we've talked a lot about it, but I kind of want to look at how these fights are going to be playing out. How do both these teams actually win these fights? Because what we've seen a lot of is Naul and Zerros are the biggest damage dealers on the side of PvP. Yes, the Lucian is obviously a threat that you have to respect, but honestly, you're kind of looking at these two to be able to threaten someone like Betty and to be able to outplay Radha if they want to come out ahead of these fights. But for Flash Wolves, the biggest concern, I think, the biggest way in which they'll win is just get Radha into the thick of things and just have him absorb all this pressure so that he can steal away Zeros's ultimate to then bring the revival back, and he can use all this sustain to just soak up a lot of the damage.
Yeah, I think him alongside Bugi with his ultimate, he can actually, absorb a lot of pressure there. The Shroud from Hanabi is going to be very big and actually zoning out these carries. So, utilizing those three ultimates in combination with also throwing in the Nautilus, then pulling him out, with that Kalista ultimate, they have no true front line, but they all have ways in which they can threaten the back line and make them respect these kind of areas of power, so to speak, for their side. It's something I want to point out really quickly, though, is the Duskblade actually on Zerros, which is such an aggressive build. You normally see things that are a little bit more defensive, things along the lines of the Death Dance. This is all about that initial hit. You come out of vision, you have that initial proc of damage along with Deathbringer Stance, and your first auto will do a tremendous amount of burst.
It's the Ghost Play that we can sometimes see if you're going for the Lataru, which, often makes sense because it's that extra bit of mobility so that you can set up those flanks before, but you're right, it's just all about the damage.
Don't need to run fast if you can one-shot them.
Also, Betty, it has a built-in sweeper, so really it's a team
macro
decision vision control is the name of the game.
Basically a sight stone at this point.
We'll clear out some of that vision now. But my biggest fear for the side of PvB at this stage is rather getting off multiple ultimates in a team fight. And when everyone has bursts on one side, not usually possible with long extended team fights where he is able to take the Aatrox ult. They're just very likely. Get
Let's go.
TP coming in. The fight, the arena has been laid down. Bugi, though, stepping on the backside, has to be careful. Immediately, Aatrox ult is coming out. Pallet blocking so much damage to the backline. Unthreatened thus far. In goes Hanabi. He's trying to clear up some space. Goes Golden as well. Now it's been Naul who's been caught out. The Ryze has been isolated. The shutdown is massive. Immediately, Flash will start to take control of the fight. All eyes on BigKoro, but Bugi is buying time for the rest of his team. Pallet now running for the hills. Rather in trouble, but he has not gone down yet. The Rek'Sai ultimate stolen away. Most likely will be used to chase down BigKoro. He will fall in this fight if Rather wants to pursue. There it goes. Goes under. Comes right back up. Easy kill for the side of Flash Wolves. And on the opposite side, PVB have fallen apart.
It ends up just being a front-to-back fight from both sides. It's hilarious how Rather steals away Zeros's ultimate. Both the Aatrox and the Sylas then use that ultimate, and then they both just die. And then they walk away from the fight, they then revive, but then it becomes this insane like brawl in the middle where all of the carries are trying to dive onto the backline, and it became a feud between can BigKoro stay alive or can Betty stay alive?
And I think Flash Wolves are honestly just doing a better job of actually consistently getting out damage. If you watch BigKoro and Naul in this fight, it is mostly retreating. It is very little damage actually coming out of the Lucian, whereas Betty is consistently getting these auto attacks off. His team is doing a better job of actually rotating through the cooldowns and creating pressure. And now Flash Wolves stacking up those spears on the Elder Dragon. This is going to be theirs, no problem.
2 stacks on the Elder Dragon. Huge combat buff moving forward, and the ping's already going down onto the Baron. They won 1 fight in that pit. They want to go for 1 more. Major cooldown still missing on the side of PVB. No flash, no heal for BigKoro, no flash for Pallet. It's going to be a tough fight to win.
I mean, how can you really contest if you're losing the 5v5 and now they have the Elder to boot? That just makes it so damn difficult, and you can really snowball the Elder very easily into this Baron. We'll see if PVB is going to be able to actually set anything up to turn.
We're going to Zhao, a lot of immediate CC coming in. The GA is there, but it's not going to mean much. Zeros, will he try to go over the wall? Will they try to keep this fight going? It's going to be the pick onto the jungler. Flash Wolves move right back into that pit.
And with the jungler gone, the risk of a smite still has diminished as well. So PVB are just forced to play on the defensive. They're going to have to hold the line against an Elder Dragon, Baron empowered Flash Wolves who have managed to claw their way back into the game.
I think it's going to be honestly really hard for them to do, given the way that things have been going. They have, not really shown any willingness to try to play the side lanes. It has been all about the 5v5, and Flash Wolves have won 3 to 4 straight 5v5s. Now have the 2 most powerful buffs in the game, which is just going to put them at such an advantage already. It's going to take something kind of special, I feel like, from PVB at this point, who have been struggling to get damage out from their carries in these 5v5s.
And props to Rather this game, who only having 1 death in the amount of crazy fights that we have seen, even though at a deficit, he's been very consistent in how he's been playing the Sylas, along with Betty, who after wasn't able to find an early game lead, actually struggled going down 0-2 early on, has been very impactful in these fights. And I feel like this duo of Rather and Betty have come up huge throughout this game and put Flash Wolves in this position.
In another game where we see Sylas be a hugely defining factor, but the fight breaks out the mid lane. Rather going to use the ultimate Pallet. Goes Golden, will be able to take it out to safety. Naul saving his teammate there. Well played for PVB to find the retreat, but Flash Wolves in absolute control in the mid lane.
Yeah, that was actually very nicely played. The Ryze ultimate layered over the stopwatch from the Braum to actually pull him to safety. A good engage still, though, from Flash Wolves to get those cooldowns out, and they are pushing in multiple lanes here. Utilizing that Baron buff, they have their top lane actually stacking up and looking like it's going to be pushing in as well. The jaws are kind of closing in here, it feels like, on PVB.
Sinking the bot wave and the mid wave, trying to find a break in the armor, trying to find an advantage over PVB in the fight. They already have Baron. The Elder Dragon buff will start to fade away, however, and they're struggling to push for anything more. We talked about the difficulties of sieging with both of these compositions. Flash Wolves is not quite confident enough to go for the full dive, and Zeros throwing down a bit of poke damage in the exchange.
Siege is slow and steady. Flash Wolves don't want to overcommit and dive, run the risk of giving the game back. Notice how they're waiting for that mid wave to collapse in first, and then they're rotating between the two. I feel like this is where they should utilize the split push power that their composition have, threaten all 3 waves rather than just 2, but they're committed to grouping up. And they're going to look to set up this siege in the mid-tier tower now. It is slowly going down thanks to the cannon minion, and Betty's getting a couple hits off.
And you can see how hard it is for Aatrox to get damage down onto Betty. Such a tanky build, a lot of lifesteal coming in from the Kalista. Mid lane breaks, that means the inhibitor will follow. All of PVB now forced to the bottom side, just defend 1 more. Breaking open that single inhibitor is going to give Flash Wolves a very large standing advantage for the next 5 minutes.
Yeah, and it gives Flash Wolves the ability to threaten a flank. You can have Rather kind of escorting in this wave in the middle lane and threatening to come from behind and actually assault those back lines from the side of PVB. But Flash Wolves now with a Baron Cannon here. That turret already very, very low. It feels like PVB may have to make the call to go for some sort of a move, but I think Flash Wolves are just going to wait for the mid lane super minions to come in, for someone to respond to that from PVB, and then look to make a move.
And you can see how hard it is for PvP to even step forward and take down this empowered cannon minion. They're using everything they have, which includes a Rek'Sai Prey Seeker. All of the Q abilities between every champion on their team just to limit that one down, but the tower will break anyway, and Flash Wolves now barreling into the base, rather waiting on that flank. As you mentioned, Azael, trying to find an option, see if this is going to be where PVB decide to engage. It only gets harder from here. Losing a second inhibitor would be disastrous. ShiauC, though, the member that has been picked out, Betty trying to reset the fight. Fate's call, will they keep going? Flash Wolves just going to back away. They know they have the advantage. They don't want to risk anything here.
I feel like Flash Wolves, they've been playing the fights extremely well so far. They don't need to back off. Here we go.
Hook goes in. Naul Ryze can hit multiple members. Hanabi immediately into the backside. Goes invisible. BigKoro not able to fight comfortably. Hanabi taking down Pallet. Flash Wolves are just rolling over PVB. Absolute dominance. Hanabi put down in the early game, but getting his vengeance in this final fight. Flash Wolves now poised to end the game. Slow and controlled, they found a way back. The triple kill for the Akali. Zeros doing what he can to survive, but it will not matter. Flash Wolves find their first win.
Big pickup for the Flash Wolves, finally making their way onto the board. Things looked a little scary in the early game, but we highlighted it. The Akali, the Sylas, they do have that scaling potential. We thought it was going to be a battle of the side laners. We thought it was going to be the 1-3-1. No, it was just team fighting. It was grouping up. It was brawling. It was chaos. We got the bloodbath that we wanted. We were expecting it early, but it was a 40-minute drawn-out game of both these teams constantly going back and forth, where Flash Wolves eventually come out on top.
Yeah, Flash Wolves certainly outperforming PVB in those late game team fights, able to execute very, very well. And the Phong Vũ Buffalo, unwilling to show any other sort of kind of adaptation. They were unwilling to try to move away from those 5v5s, to try to go to those side lanes, to try to look for picks or do anything else. And Flash Wolves simply outplayed them in the 5v5, and if not willing to go anywhere else, what more do you expect?
And it's something that I respect so much from the Flash Wolves, that even when they're put in a deficit, they're still watching all the time for those openings to find a win in a team fight. They put in a goal deficit, doesn't matter. They see someone overstep on the enemy team, they pick a member off, they know they're instantly in advantage state, and it's something that is so impressive to watch. Now, the State Farm Analyst Desk is standing by to give us their thoughts on that game.
Thank you very much, Drakos. We have many a thought on that game. In the battle between winless teams, Flash Wolves does come out with the victory. They'll be happy to have secured that one, but probably not terribly happy with their performance and how hard they had to work to claw that one back in order to ultimately get the win.
Now, I do want to be like, yay, Flash Wolves, you did it, you're on the board. At the same time, I have to come in with, like, disappointed mom right now.
Oh.
One of the things is that Flash Wolves and MSI have, I know, Bryce is like, no, not again. Flash Wolves usually are so good in draft for MSI. You look back to last year when they made their big splash, they kind of figure out these styles, and then it really works for them. And I don't know if that's because Sword Art's gone, Maple's gone, coaching staff is gone, but the drafts this time around have just not been good. I didn't like the Cho'Gath Rumble draft. I certainly don't like this one. And I want to hone in on the fact that they prioritized the Nautilus over something like a Jarvan. I think this draft is too short range with not enough engage possibilities. Like, you're only relying on Nautilus there. And if you get a Jarvan, you then have that big engage option that you need on something that is very short range. But the fact is, he got banned away from the Jarvan. He couldn't go for Sejuani because he needed more diverse physical damage, didn't want to stack more magic damage onto that, ends up with Xin Zhao, and I'm just like, I guess we're going to 41 minutes when it's just going to smash into each other and just slowly roll over.
I think if you ignore team names, then I actually think the draft is fine. I think a big issue is you pick an early game jungler for your weakest member in this game here, on the side of Flash Wolves, and nothing happens early game. Where on the other side from Phong Vũ Buffalo, the Rek'Sai is actually able to pull off kills in multiple lanes. So I think there was a big difference there, which made it a lot harder for these two, like the Akali and the Sylas, actually getting out of laning phase ahead so they could be split pushed. Because it was like 1-3-1 versus 1-3-1 in terms of what we were looking at for mid game, with all these like strong skirmish champions. And then late game team fights, Flash Wolves would always win because they just could like kite with Kalista. But I felt like the draft was more than fine for Flash Wolves. I'm just looking at the play in the early game.
I will say this, specifically focusing on the bottom lane, BigKoro and Palette played incredibly safe, recognizing that Nautilus and Zhao was going to be coming for them. We've seen that play so many times globally, and they recognized it to play so close to their turret that the Xin Zhao was sitting in the tri-bush for quite some time. He's like, okay, I finally came for the gank. It didn't work. I have to look elsewhere. Mid lane was only a priority for him there.
Yeah, I think, BigKoro and Palette have kind of been the surprise of the tournament for PVB, as in coming in, everyone was looking at the top side of the map, but understanding they need to play safe, in this case, in the early game. I do also think we need to recognize that PVB continues to push the pace in the early game as, is very much the identity of this squad, but still we see some issues in transitioning any of those early game, quick pace, advantages into wins.
Yeah, I can't even believe I'm hearing us say how they played safe in the bot lane from the Phong Vũ Buffalo. Like, this team in Vietnam, this team in play-ins, you would never say that. You would never say they played safe in the bot lane and we would be cheering and saying, that's great. We'd be like, expecting them. They should be hitting the turret, from minute one, basically, just sitting there already. But it is a shift they have now made. Against Team Liquid, they did it. Against Flash Wolves as well. It wasn't the all-in aggression that we have seen before. And it looked good for like 25 minutes. But I feel like there was always this feeling of, is it enough? Are you going to be able to close out the game in time? And eventually Flash will start getting to a point where they can win. But I guess it is a bigger discussion regarding playstyle for Phong Vũ Buffalo.
Right, let's take a look at one of the fights that helps PVB get in the driver's seat. This one coming 17 minutes in, 3-for-0 around the Drake. Then we'll get to where it all fell apart.
And I feel like in any situation where you're just trying to 5v5, especially if you do turn on the team names and you see that this is the Buffaloes versus Flash Wolves, that it was always going to be a long win for Flash Wolves. And I think that was the lens that when we were making these predictions, everyone's like, yeah, PVB will probably get ahead in the early game, but closing against the Flash Wolves, because they do have this tendency to just kind of focus in, look for those 5v5s, was never going to work. And maybe there's genius there from Flash Wolves then drafted the comp being like, they're going to 5v5 us anyway, like, let's go. But if I am going to focus in on a member and what PVB can kind of correct so it doesn't turn into that type of situation, it's Naul on something like a Ryze. I think when you have a champion like Ryze, we were talking about it, the ability to play side lane, to use that mobility, to kind of unlock and use the most out of his kit is just not being seen here. Yeah, there were some flashy plays with like the Braum and getting him back into safety and things like that, but so far he's not making the map impact that he really needs to on that champion. They're just running in 5v5.
And contrasting it to Flash Wolves, because we're finally seeing that control later on in the game. Because for the first few games in the tournament from them, Betty has been the one getting caught out, not able to actually land the damage that was necessary. This time around, it was actually BigKoro really not finding space to play around, where Betty was free hitting. Like, he was legitimately playing well across side of Bugi and Hanabi, and so the space was there for him to be able to do damage.
I don't know how that happens. Like, once Betty has GA and like the game gets late enough, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's impossible to get to Betty. But the fact that Kalista, such a short-range ADC, was able to team fight so early on against someone like Aatrox and Ryze, a fed Aatrox at that point in the game, I'm like, you just completely fumbled those team fights. You shouldn't be able to walk up to that.
But I guess a big thing there is the range on the other side from Phong Vũ Buffalo is not very long either. It's not like Lucian by any means long-range ADC. Aatrox has to like dash towards you and you can then jump backwards as a Kalista. So I think if you on both comps, they were both just very short-ranged. And one side had Hanabi Akali, who were just kind of gonna kill you if you walked into them, and then Kalista could keep jumping backwards if needed. And there's just a big difference in a long fight in the late game between Kalista and Lucian.
And this is where I want to return to a conversation that you started in Countdown today, Raz, because I'm taking a look at that gold graph and I see 5K just past the 20-minute mark in favor of Phong Vũ Buffalo. Again, if we looked at any of the top 4 teams in this tournament, we'd probably say with that kind of a lead, they're expected to win in 99 to 100% of cases. But that's not the case for this PVB squad. Yet, we're also excited about this squad and what they can do in the early game and their ability to push the pace and kind of create an exciting game. But there is this breakdown. There's the lack of ability to take that breath once they have that lead and say, hey, let's return back, let's go to the fundamentals of League and closing out a League game. And I'm still trying to figure out, in this case, or as in many other cases, where they could have shored up those weaknesses and made the difference.
Now, this game was different from the first few where we saw them coming out like fiery, making this, or at least like specifically from Meliodas, trying to create goal leads by messing with the enemy team's vision control, like essentially finding free picks and ganks. This time around, they played it by the books to be able to get their lead, The issue is then moving on to the next pace. Baron buff was up. They had a great goal lead. They had mid lane pushed out. But for whatever reason, they wanted to play into Fog of War. They wanted to play away from where the control was for them personally. And so in that fight that we saw, that essentially dictated that game. You move bottom lane, BigKoro can't do anything, and then you lose Baron buff of that entire play. So the decision there is more so, what should we be doing in that situation? Because Phong Vũ Buffalo, when they have a lead, they want to continue to fight. And so that's where we got to see some of those plays come out.
I think it's very important to highlight that it's extremely difficult for professional teams to execute split push compositions the further you go into a game. There's so much that goes into the setup. You know, you can't overextend as a single member. You will get caught out. Enemy team gets into a position to engage on your team, and you're forced to run, you know, from your side lane in to join the team fight unless you can maybe trade for an inhib. And there's a lot of things that's really hard to set up. So often in tournaments as a team, you have to sit down and say, okay, what's our strength? What's our weakness? How do we band-aid the weaknesses as much as possible so that we can actually win some games right now? Because you don't have a lot of time to change. You can't just ask for 3 more days of scrims before you play again. And in PVB's easier. In PVB's situation, late game, they're playing comps that are too difficult for them to execute. I actually think if you want to go pure team fight as the way for you to win, you need to start bringing some hard engage to the table. You need to start bringing some champions that can, like, let's say Nocturne Galio, let's do Orin, like these kind of things where you can really hard force on enemy backlines, because you're not going to win games by being a split pushing team when you just don't have the fundamentals to do it. So either you go all in early game and you try and just crush them as fast as possible, or you build really big engaged teamfight comps. I don't see them win any game if they don't go for one of those two.
I mean, I think we look at a team like G2, another fast-paced team. The big difference for me is that setup, right? Once they have the lead, we've talked about their ability to move into one side of the jungle, get down, you know, 4 or 5 wards, multiple pinks, and then waiting for the opportunity to present itself and take the right fight. For PVB, it looks like, hey, we've got a lead. That means we should win the fight, so just take it. And they're kind of skipping that setup.
100%. I think this is a great time for them to learn, because we've seen Phong Vũ Buffalo actually at now numerous tournaments, because once upon a time they were known as young generation. So this experience is necessary. We'll see them again. I mean, they have a few more games going forward, so I think that they're already getting better at it.
All right, well, Flash Wolves was able to pick up a necessary victory for them here in the group stage. Coming up next, the undefeated Invictus Gaming step on stage for their first match of the day against Team Liquid. Don't miss it.